Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Daily Kos The Brief. It's our weekly show about politics. I am Marcos Moletzis. I'm here with Carrie Alavel. She's back from holiday travels and vacations and all that good stuff. And today we actually have a pretty good show. We're gonna talk about Kevin McCarthy and the Republican shit show that is their attempt to organize the House, and it's freaking hilarious. We're having a lot of fun at this. I've never seen somebody with such a Pyrrhic victory as this one. I mean, they think they won. Kevin McCarthy thinks he won, and yet there's a pretty decent chance that he will not be the Speaker of the House, just like last time this came up. So in a few minutes, we're going to have Joan McCarter. She's a senior writer at Daily Kos. She covers Congress for Daily Kos, and she is going to talk about her coverage of the Kevin McCarthy saga. So, Carrie, welcome. It's good to see you. And it's December. It's Christmas time. You think things would be quiet, but no, we got the Kevin McCarthy stuff. We have Trump Organization was found guilty on all charges of tax fraud, and then we got the Georgia runoff. As we record this, people are voting in Georgia, so we won't know who actually won, but that's pretty exciting, and all early indications are looking pretty good for us. So it's kind of an action-packed early December week. Who would have thunk it?
I mean, us. Remember we said if we deal them a major blow, during the midterms, it's going to be a world of hurt for them. And that's exactly what it is. It's a world of hurt for them. I mean, it is, I think, so Joan's going to talk specifically about the fight for Speaker, which is just a disaster, and I can't do it justice. So I'm just going to leave that for Joan.
Yes.
Right. But, I think just to broaden it out a little bit, you just think about where the Republican Party is right now. And, Trump is still the main guy. He's the only person at this point who has announced for, his candidacy for the nomination in 2024. Of course, it was really a desperation play because I'm sure he wants to use his candidacy, hoping that it will, relieve him of some of the legal problems that he's having. He's having a lot of legal problems. His organization just got, found guilty on multiple criminal felonies. So, that will probably put wind in the sails of the ongoing investigation of him by the Attorney General.
I mean, there's like 13 investigations. Yeah, there's so many. Like, who can even still like anymore?
The New York District Attorney, who kind of decided he was going to let go of the other criminal investigation of the Trump Organization involving Trump. It's just like it can just go on and on. So there's that. But on top of that, of course, Trump, it's not good enough for him to just announce. Then he just has to bring down a whole world of hurt on the GOP. And on his Truth Social platform, rant that he thinks that given all the evidence, which there's been no evidence, right? But all of the evidence in his head about fraud, related to fraud and stuff, that it amounts to enough at this point in his view that there should be a termination of all the rules, regulations, and even stuff in the Constitution in order to reinstate him president. I mean, he's talking about 2020 now. He's not talking about 2022.
Yeah, he wants to throw away the Constitution. And there is evidence, Carrie. There is evidence. It turns out, we just found out last week that Twitter deleted tweets with Hunter Biden's dick pictures. And therefore, this is the greatest fraud in the history of the world, because had America seen Hunter Biden's penis, things would have been totally different.
Wow. I don't know how I missed that, but I'm glad I didn't have that information to tell just now.
Oh, you didn't even know. I'm not kidding. No, I'm not exaggerating.
Listen, Marcos, I just want to say I definitely would have voted for Trump if I had seen the dick pictures, for sure. I mean, I voted for Biden, but now I'm reconsidering. I mean, this is so stupid. He's so stupid. But the Republicans, the problem is that we expect this from Trump, right? And we expect the Republican response too. But here he is calling for the termination, the suspension of the U.S. Constitution. They are the foundational documents of our country, of our democracy, of our republic. And he's calling for the termination, the suspension of it. And Republicans can't even come out and say, I wouldn't support Donald Trump as the nominee because he doesn't believe in the Constitution. He thinks it should be suspended and terminated. I mean, this is a simple call. It's a test of democracy. Do you believe, do you back Trump or do you back the US Constitution? It's that simple. And it's simple, right? It's simple. It's a test of democracy, and they cannot say it. I mean, you got Representative David Joyce of Ohio on this week, Sunday this week, ABC's This Week, saying, well, I'm going to support whoever the GOP nominee is, but I just don't think Trump will get through because there's going to be a lot of other, a lot of other people who run, et cetera. Well, there were a lot of other people who ran in 2016, and unless Republicans change the proposition that all you have to do is win a plurality in order to take all of their states, what's the word?
The delegates.
Delegates, right. In order to win all of the states' delegates, then it will be Donald Trump all over again. I mean, unless the state parties change that to what we do, which is proportional delegates, Donald Trump will win.
Because to be clear, he'll win because in a crowded field, he can get 30% of the vote. And if everybody else is splitting the rest of the vote, he gets every single delegate in that state. It's how he won the nomination in 2016. Exactly. And he has a floor. He has a good 30 to 40%, probably 40, I would say, that will vote for him no matter what. So all you need is two candidates running on the other side, splitting. And we know there's several that think they're running. So, but Carrie, we're going to save that topic for a future episode. We're going to have plenty to talk about on the 2024 Republican nominating contest and Donald Trump's effect on the party. But today, let's talk about Kevin McCarthy. And so we're going to bring in our guest. She's Joan McCarter. She's a senior writer at Daily Kos. She covers Congress for us. Joan, thank you so much for joining us.
After I unmute, I'll say it again. I'm excited to be here. A little rusty at this. I've only been doing radio. Adding in the video is just very confusing for me.
So, Joan, you've been writing a lot about this this leadership battle in the House, and you even wrote a piece a couple of days ago on the different scenarios. And I want to get to that in a second. But before that, I think it's important for people to realize that Kevin McCarthy has been in this place before already. He was the heir apparent. Joan, can you talk to us a little bit about that history and how he was denied the speakership last time?
Yeah, that was the John Boehner debacle when the Freedom Caucus reared its head and said, okay, we can't have John Boehner anymore. We are going to come up with a motion to vacate the chair, which is...
What year was this?
This was 2015.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the motion to vacate the chair is basically a vote of no confidence in the party or in the party membership as a whole. So Kevin McCarthy was supposed to be the heir apparent for Boehner, but he was involved in some private matters. He was having an affair with another member. And this was a problem.
Quaint. Like when people care about those things, remember?
Right. Of course, the other member, Renee Elmers, ended up losing her seat, and Kevin McCarthy is now in a position to be Republican leader. So, that's how things work there. Anyway.
I didn't catch any sarcasm or bitterness.
So that's how things work there. Anyway, sorry.
McCarthy,
so he was heir apparent because John Boehner was speaker and he was majority leader at the time. I believe so. He was like second in command.
Majority leader or whip?
Yeah,
I think he was majority leader.
I think he was majority leader too.
Yeah. So anyway, all of this was baggage, supposedly, that they don't care about it now, but it was baggage then, so it didn't happen. Boehner decided he'd had enough. He was stepping down. They were having a very difficult time finding a replacement because I mean, who would want that job really besides Kevin McCarthy, who's dumb enough to want the job besides Kevin
Right,
McCarthy?
exactly. Yes, Kevin McCarthy's dumb enough, but let's just say there were these warring factions between the Freedom Caucus, the sort of crazy caucus of the House Republicans, and then the supposedly establishment Republicans who were a little bit more normie, whatever.
Same as ever.
Right. Yeah. Finding some sort of consensus where they could all come to agreement on, okay, this is the person that was the real rub, right?
And, you also need the background of the Tea Party fight, the Freedom Caucus coming in, the Affordable Care Act efforts to repeal it, all of the things that led up to this, and the Freedom Caucus just essentially blocking absolutely anything Boehner tried to do. Forgetting that there was a president and that there was a Senate that they also had to deal with. They were going to control things. And that meant just, the debt ceiling fights, the fiscal cliff fight, the various government shutdown fights. So, it really has been a nightmare all along. So thank goodness for Democratic leadership for the time that we've had it. But here we go again. And again, Kevin McCarthy is the only person besides apparently Andy Biggs of the Freedom Caucus, who really thinks it would be a good idea to be in charge of these people.
Except, don't you think Elise Stefanik wants it? Don't you think she does?
I have been thinking about this since we brought it up earlier in our chat, and she is calculating enough and evil enough that I think Stefanik
let people know
be Elise Stefanik.
Yeah.
She is a member from New York. She's in leadership. I can't, they have so many different positions.
She's House number 3. She's basically the communication guru. Yeah. She's the number 3 leader in the House for Republicans.
She has been really, really quiet in all of this.
And normally she's not.
She's not.
She's not a shy person.
No, not at all. She came into office as a moderate. Quickly saw
She was Paul Ryan. She was a student of Paul Ryan and all, the idea guy.
Mr. Wonk.
Yeah.
Who was the interim speaker after that was who they finally talked into doing it until he, decided, no, I don't want to do this either. And got out. So anyway, Stefanik has been suspiciously quiet. So you got to wonder, is she sort of pulling strings among all of these people back there, thinking that maybe she's the one who rises to the top?
Now, all right, so let me pull this back and let's So McCarthy already tried once and he was a victim of his maybe his infidelity, maybe ideological. I mean, a lot of that seems very convenient as an excuse. I don't think they care because the same people didn't care about Donald Trump's infidelity, right? So I think that was an excuse.
It was probably that he was too close to Boehner. And ideologically, they thought that was a problem. And that's kind of one of his problems now. So he's too establishment.
Right. So now he's been leading the Republicans in the minority. Mm-hmm. They have the majority. It's 222 to 213, I believe, right? It's a 9 vote.
Well, a Democrat just died, so 222 to 12, and they have to get a new replacement in for that. But
yeah. So it's a 5-vote. It's a 5-vote really swing, which is an incredibly tight House, and so. But the election for speaker doesn't. I mean, the Democrats really don't have a say in that. More, pretty much, unless and we're going to talk about potential scenarios, right? Yeah. But generally speaking, the party that's in power, they vote for their leadership, and so it's a majority of the. No, it's not even a majority. Can you explain what he needs to do to win? Because I almost said it wrong.
All right, so you start with the premise that he has to get 218. To win, legislation has to have 218 to pass. That's the bare
all
majority.
Democrats will vote no.
So, all the Democrats will vote no. Yeah. So he has to get 218 Republicans
of 222.
Of 222. Yeah. So technically, he can only lose 4 and still be there.
I think he can only lose 4.
It's not necessarily 218 because you can be present but not voting. You can vote as present, and that doesn't count against.
Yeah.
So if he gets 215 for voting present, he still gets it.
Okay.
So that's one of the wrinkles that comes up. So you have to be present and voting. So if they don't show up at all, if they boycott, then he can get in with fewer than 218.
Okay, and
But-
to be clear,
but-
like Nancy
yeah.
Pelosi used this a lot. Like conservative Democrats would vote present, and so they wouldn't be voting for Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
But functionally, it was like voting for Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
So if you're McCarthy, you're trying to get these people who say they're not going to vote for you, and it's like, okay, you don't have to vote for me, but
Yeah.
just vote present, right?
Yeah. Don't actively work against me in this vote. Yeah.
Right. But one way or the other, even regardless of that kind of processy thing,
Mhm.
he doesn't have much to lose. I mean, he's got a very slim margin. I mean, let's just
Mhm.
remember that it was the margin that Nancy Pelosi governed with, and it's the
Right.
margin that Nancy Pelosi pushed through, just really an historic agenda given given by any measure, but given the margin she was working with. And now he doesn't, it looks like he's going to have a lot of trouble. I mean, how many people have already come out, Joan, and said, I'm not voting for him? Do we have 4 on record?
4 definitively, 1 likely. Another popped up today that was sort of interesting. Chip Roy from Texas, who actually is coming at it from an angle I did not expect.
Yeah, let's talk about him because that was I misread that for for a whole day without realizing.
Yeah, you're
'Cause
thinking,
who is he?
okay, Chip Roy,
He's this, like,
insurrectionist,
crazy-
Texas
yeah,
guy,
insurrectionist.
crazy guy. He's gonna be, but no, he's mad that McCarthy and the establishment didn't stand up to Trump and didn't prevent January 6th and the insurrection. He said, we saw this coming, we saw this chaos coming. I was going to support you if there had been fraud, and if you could have proven that there was fraud, I would have been right there with you, but you did not. And look what you did to the country. I was just shocked as hell that was Chip Roy's opposition to Kevin McCarthy, but
No, like I said, I read, January 6th. I'm like, oh, like McCarthy
Yeah.
didn't support insurrectionists strongly enough.
yeah.
And it took I think it was actually, it took 3 or 4 readings before I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Did I get this wrong the whole
He's
time?
on our side?
That was so
What?
weird. So
he's
the margin is
impossible.
tight. How many people are in the Freedom Caucus?
They
About
don't
30,
actually
40?
they don't produce a role. They don't actually advertise that, but it's 40, maybe 50. We don't know for sure.
And we know that some of them, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, support Boehner. So there's not unified Freedom
Boehner.
Caucus. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, which is another
It's
question.
the same old shit show. It's just we're just changing the
Let's
names
just change
here.
the names
Just
and-
changing
So there's
the
no
names. So.
there's no Freedom Caucus unified opposition, right? So there are fissures even within the Freedom Caucus itself. I mean,
Right.
this is civil war upon.
Yeah. And today's meeting was really funny. They came out of it bitching that Marjorie
Meeting of
Taylor
what? Of what?
Greene. There was a meeting of the GOP House Conference to
Okay.
talk about all of this, because what else are they going to talk about? It's not like they have an agenda. Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently used her allotted time to give to other members who are in support of McCarthy, and this really made the Freedom Caucus maniacs mad. They're not getting their fair time. So now there's war, yes, with her, who also I would really like to know what McCarthy has promised her.
Oh, absolutely.
To get her on
McCarthy has
board.
absolutely promised something. He, I saw what was it, Marcy Wheeler make the comment that Greene was supporting McCarthy, and it was what'd she say? Probably because she's made the correct bet that she can own him. And I think that's true. I mean, it's not that hard to own McCarthy, but if he gets in, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to own him.
You know that she's going to be on the oversight committee.
Oh, yeah.
Which is already
All right.
in there.
So, Joan, there are such a thing as House Republican moderates. And even if there weren't before, we know there's 20-some House Republicans that represent Joe Biden districts who are in deep trouble in 2 years. And in particular, a bunch of them in New York and California that are pretty heavy because Democratic turnout in safe blue states was actually down in the midterm
Mhm.
election. So where have they said anything? Is there any noise coming from them?
You know, a lot of them are freshmen, just elected, so I don't expect to hear anything from them. They're all being pretty quiet. I mean, you had one of them, Don Bacon from Nebraska, sort of pipe up, what, three weeks ago, I think, say, you know, well, yeah, we could work with Democrats, maybe the moderates, to find a speaker we could all agree on. And then he had to walk that back.
Oh,
yes.
did he walk it back?
He did walk it back and say, okay, no, I'm voting for McCarthy. I'm voting for McCarthy, and this is all really damaging. But you know,
right.
you know from that it's in their heads. We could be kingmakers here.
And okay, so let's now talk about what are the possibilities. This piece you wrote, because there are what, 3 main possibilities, and so let's start with the most obvious probable outcome, which is McCarthy figures out a way, right?
Yeah, and I think that probably is most likely. I think probably it will be with a lot of present votes, and it will be possibly multiple ballots. The most ballots they've ever done was 133, but that was like more than a century ago. That's not going to happen. But it could take a few days.
Oh my God. Can you imagine working those few days? That'd be a joy.
Wouldn't it? It could be a few days, but I do expect that it's going to be McCarthy, and he's going to go in and he's going to be very weak because he's not going to have all that support.
Now, that's the most likely, but there are some other possibilities. The Freedom Caucus may get the numbers. They may be able to stop them.
Right.
So what other options are there?
They have sort of their mystery date. They say they're bringing to January 3rd, which I don't believe. I
Who's
think
they?
They entirely
the Freedom Caucus?
The Freedom Caucus.
Or the
We've
Rebels,
got
whatever.
Somebody. The Rebels. It could be Freedom Caucus. It could be whoever else is opposed to McCarthy.
Is it Donald
We've
Trump?
got somebody really special that you know, a to be named later, who isn't in the House now, because that's a thing. The Speaker does not have to be a member of the House. So you're just going to be wowed when we show this person. I don't think that's real.
But Andy Biggs is a member of the Freedom Caucus, right?
Right.
And he's announced that he's going to
today that he's still in it. He lost back in November when they did their preliminary vote, secret ballot within the Republican caucus. He lost 185 to 31 or something. Yeah. But so the theory is he's going to put himself out there now to take all of the pain from McCarthy's people. He's going to be the sacrifice that will take all of that ire so that they can bring somebody else in after who will be
Donald Trump. Is it
crafty?
Is it Donald Trump? I think we already know it's not Newt Gingrich. That was one of my top choices.
Oh, that would be hilarious. They're going to try to
sneak him back in, but
does Paul Ryan want another crack at it? All right. Okay. So option one
Paul Ryan, honestly, he's not that dumb. He's honestly not that dumb.
No, he's not that dumb.
He's a far cry from the ideas guy, but he's not that dumb.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So McCarthy's option one, the most likely, but not a sure thing. There might be a consensus candidate that all the Republicans can agree on, or enough Republicans can agree on.
Right.
Maybe it's this mystery date.
Which is not going to happen either. I mean, that's a magical unicorn theory.
All right. So what's the Don Bacon theory or possibility?
Don Bacon theory. This one is that the moderates, the problem solvers, I would like to see what problems they have ever solved.
In
the big bipartisan group of problem solvers who get together and concern troll about everything on both sides, that they'll come together and enough Democrats and enough Republicans will decide on a consensus candidate, and that will be the new speaker, somebody that everybody can love.
So to be very clear, this is the Democrats would join up with about all you need is like 10.
You only need 10. Yeah, you don't need many. And as you said, there are 18 or so that are, in Biden districts who might think about this.
And then like a Don Bacon, who's a moderate, like a legitimately moderate as far as Republicans go, candidate. And I'd like to point out that this is actually almost like the norm in Alaska in the last few cycles, where the Republican Party has a majority nominally, but they are fractured between the Sarah Palin wing of the Republican Party and then the more moderates. And those guys have teamed up with Democrats to elect moderate Republican speaker and majority leader. So the Democrats have had, this weird power sharing control of the Alaska legislature by doing this. So this is not unprecedented politically. It is unprecedented in Washington, D.C. And so
right.
The odds are not great, but it's there.
It's there. I think it's theoretical, because are you going to get those Republicans, even the ones in Biden's districts, to say, I will support a Democrat? Are you going to get any Democrats? Are you going to get any Democrats willing to vote for a Republican? Willing to, unanimously come together?
Over McCarthy? Over I don't know, at least
I don't know, just the chaos it would cause.
Chaos that it would cause would be worthwhile.
But maybe the deal is there's no Hunter Biden investigation.
Look, I think, to Joan's point, it's less likely that the Republicans will do this than the Democrats would, because because in the next 2 years, if they wanted to win their seat again, they'd have to change their party membership to Democratic, because they'd be drummed out during the primary if they ran as Republicans. So they would be basically saying, okay, I accept the fact that my future as a Republican is over, and I'm just going to switch to the Democratic Party in 2 years to run, or a year and a half, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that Hakeem Jeffries went on one of the Sunday shows and was asked, would Democrats work with Republicans to do this? And he basically said, good luck with that. That's their problem. Let them figure it out. We're not going to help. So that's the starting point for Democrats. And let us also say that Democrats are in complete array right now.
Yes, complete unity. So there's a fourth option, and this is the least likely of them all. And I just want to mention it because it is an actual possibility, is that you get, like you said, actually, you get some of these Republicans in these very, very blue districts that won on flukes, that have pretty much zero chance of surviving re-election in 2 years. Why not switch parties? And kick the again, you only need 5. And there's like 12 of them that would be candidates. Now, obviously, it's not very, very likely, but it's in that realm of possibility where Democrats keep control, which would be the most funniest, most hilarious outcome possible. And there's reasons we actually don't want that to happen. It's always good to run against a Republican House when Biden's running for re-election, right? As opposed to running with unified
particularly
government.
When you've got a tough Senate landscape.
That
you
said,
need the Republicans to point out and say, do you want this to happen again?
That said, if the Freedom Caucus cost them the House control of the House, it would just, Kerry's been talking about this sort of, collapse of the Republican Party as it just sort of descends into mass chaos. And oh boy, would that create some interesting consequences on their side.
That would be fun. That might finally be sort of the breaking point for the Republicans as they are. This is just such an interesting dynamic, because you've got McCarthy, who has Trump's support, or at least did, if it matters anymore. I don't know. Trump could change his mind if he thinks that McCarthy has the loser stink on him. But right now, he's a Trump guy. So what in the world is going on with the Freedom Caucus? Are they not Trump guys anymore? What's Chip Roy doing? It's really a wild time among Republicans, and a lot of fun to watch.
So let's just assume, because it's the most likely option, that McCarthy somehow, you get the 4 that vote against him, but then everybody else just votes present.
Yeah.
He gets in, he's the speaker, but he's got this razor thin majority. What can he possibly accomplish? I mean, is it just going to be investigations into Hunter Biden's dick pics, or is there going to be anything else that they might accomplish?
I don't think there's going to be anything else that they accomplish. You've got all of these Freedom Caucus types and everybody else who has an axe to grind coming up with all of the rules that they want to adopt for the House. And most of them really would sort of hamstring any functioning. One of them came up with the idea that at the end of every session, you have to have a votorama where every single bill introduced in the House has to get a vote.
Oh my
We're
God! Can you
talking about
imagine the
stuff like that.
Democrats with that? Oh my God! Have a field day
Wouldn't
on
that be
that
fun?
one.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh.
No, they're not going to try to accomplish anything besides investigations, which I should say also Jim Jordan was one of the people that they talked about as a possible consolation candidate that everybody could get behind. Jim Jordan doesn't want anything to do with being speaker. He wants to have his judiciary chair seat where he can just be on camera constantly yelling about Joe Biden and his crime family.
But they promised us that they would solve inflation.
Yeah. And the very first press conference they had after it was clear that they were going to win the majority was to talk about the investigation into Hunter Biden.
It's almost, feels to me like it's almost a best case scenario where you keep the Senate so you can keep the judges cranking, right? The House has nothing to do with judges. Biden passed most of his agenda.
Yeah.
The stuff that could get through the Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema gauntlet.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really anything else that was reachable beyond keeping the government running. There's some.
Yeah, the keeping the government running and the debt ceiling issue are kind of big.
But but here's where we get to this. There wasn't much that, obviously keeping the government running is big, but the reason that incumbent presidents get reelected at the clip that they do is because they historically lose control of Congress in that first midterm election. And therefore, you can blame them for all the problems.
Right.
As opposed to you got control of everything. How come, why hasn't stuff been fixed? And so you're going to have a nihilist Republican House that's going to be obsessed with Hunter Biden's dick pics. And that's the framing. Like, they can try to make it about anything else. And we're just going to be like, why do you want Lindsey Graham? Why are you so obsessed with Hunter Biden's dick? Like that's the narrative, and it's an easy one. And
I just want it noted that Marcos said that Marcos came up with that hypothesis. I just,
I mean, they want to see, like, they're obsessed with Hunter Biden's penis, and and then on a substantive standpoint. Yeah.
Can I just add that the Republican Party is uniquely obsessed with what people do in their bedrooms, re abortion, re Hunter Biden's dick pics, whatever, and also obsessed with what people do in the bathrooms. I mean, it is the bathroom and bedroom obsessionist party. Okay, I just wanted to broaden it out. It's not just Hunter Biden. I mean, it is. It is the dick pics, but it's like they're just they want to control everything related to bathroom and bedroom.
And Carrie, you've made this argument that Democrats can really carve out a place as the party of privacy, and this is sort of an example. And they're going to be fueling that, digging into people's private business as that really no bearing. And then on the other hand, they're going to be shutting down the government. This is not a place for the Republicans to build a brand. The House, I think the House is lost. They do not hold the House in 2 years, just given what the map looks like and the dynamics of the seats that are in play. The Senate, on the other hand, it's a brutally difficult Senate seat. There's really no realistic Democratic pickup opportunities outside of flukes. I mean, Ted Cruz is not popular, so maybe there's something fluky happens in Texas. But there really aren't that many. I mean, I don't think there's any real.
There could be deaths. There could be retirements.
Yeah,
so it could be Republicans dying and retiring.
But the states that are up for re-election, we have to defend states like Ohio and Montana, and they're defending the biggest opportunities that they're defending are Texas and Florida. I mean, this is not not a good.
We're defending like about 10, right? I can't remember exactly.
And it's all the tough ones, like all the tough ones.
Tough ones. Yeah.
So
it's a bad year ahead of us, which I think is probably one of the things that they're thinking about in not fixing the debt ceiling issue is that they're going to let Republicans try to take us to the brink in order to cut Social Security, cut Medicare, do all of these really, really, really unpopular things, and we can come back and say, look at the chaos they created. I personally do not love turning this into a totally political issue because it does do damage to the economy to even flirt with not raising the debt ceiling. But but I'm a
There's yeah,
worrier. So
there's definitely a political game in play. I mean, the best case scenario is we hold our seats. We end up
Yeah.
at 51 after, as we record this today, it's
Yeah.
Tuesday, that we win that runoff in Georgia. We have 51 seats. It gives us a 2-seat margin to
get a lot done with judges and a lot of other
Yeah.
things. Yeah, I mean, it makes a huge, huge, huge difference to have that 51. Subpoena power. Lots of stuff that the Senate can do with 51 that they couldn't do with 50. Senate Democrat.
Yeah. I mean, some people have conjectured, of course, that they could continue on with the January 6th committee's investigations, followed up on things that have been left hanging open.
Right.
So
they can get Trump's IRS files for one thing.
Right.
There's a lot that they could carry on. Yeah.
If we win that 51st seat with Raphael Warnock today, if you're in Georgia, vote. Okay, sorry.
They're not going to hear this till tomorrow. So if you're hearing this tomorrow on Wednesday, it's too late to vote. Sorry.
There's a smattering of people who follow us live, and they are probably ditching us right now to get over to the polls and cast their vote. And we're going to win by 10 votes. And I'm going to be like, it
was Carrie. Carrie did that.
So, Joan, we're almost out of time. What do you predict is going to happen in the House, and what are the next 2 years going to look like in the lower house?
I predict that Kevin McCarthy is going to scramble his way into leadership. I can't imagine how many motions to vacate the chair might come up against him.
And that's people trying to overthrow him.
That's people trying to get rid of him like they did Boehner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see at least 2 or 3 of those. I think
fun. That's delicious.
Yeah. It's just gonna be sheer chaos. It's gonna be sheer chaos and dick pics.
Yes. I don't. You know what? If we had to lose the House, this is probably like a best case scenario on how to do it. Very razor thin majority. They're in utter chaos and turmoil, while our side, by acclaim, nominated our new leadership. So it definitely shows that for once we have our house in order, and they don't.
I want to say, and I just want to I think I want to get rid of the for once, okay? Because I think we're about to go into a period where Republicans have been in chaos for 5 solid years now. I mean, 6. Let's see.
Really?
Six since 2016. I mean, since 2015. So 7.
Yeah.
They've been in sheer chaos now for 7 years. I know the mainstream media loves the Democrats in disarray. And, Democrats, we're a group of downtrodden cynics for the most part. I'm sorry if you guys are hearing this. I'm just going to name that there's a leaf blower in the background. But I just want to say, if you go back, and I encourage everyone who listens to this to go back and listen to the piece that the podcast between Marcos and Simon Rosenberg last week. I wholeheartedly agree that we are entering a different period now where Democrats have an opportunity to be, we're going to have our internal fights, and we're going to, everyone's good. I mean, Democrats didn't get this way because we don't believe in principles. We do. And so that's why Democrats fight about what's the best way to reach our goals and whatever. Right. But I just think that the Republican Party has been in disarray for 7 years in a way that hasn't been properly documented or acknowledged. And we should own that and realize that we are actually in position to do something truly historic over the next, 5 years to a decade, while Republicans try to figure out what the heck they are about. Because they've got a whole host of things between Trump, between abortion, between privacy issues, between gun laws, between immigration, etc. You go on and on down the list. They're going to have to reckon with every one of these social issues that used to work for them and now work against them. I'm going to mute my mic because of that.
Except that, the problem is that they've got the judiciary and the Supreme Court on their side. So that's just a little bit of a problem. And tomorrow's going to be lit when we hear the independent state legislature theory in the Supreme Court.
We'll save the independent state legislature theory of the Supreme Court for a future episode, because the assault on our rights and freedoms is going to continue unabated, but it's also going to give us another issue to run. And the the current Supreme Court did something that nobody had ever been able to do, and it's it made liberals care about courts, Supreme Courts at the state level and at the federal level. We never voted on the courts. And when people talk about, well, Democrats voted on abortion, they're talking about the court. People finally realized that the court is on the ballot. Republicans have known this for the last 50, 60 years. We didn't, I mean, us four, we knew, or us three, we knew. If you're listening to the show, you knew.
We've been yelling about it for years.
But broadly speaking, people did not know that. And now I think it's really sort of seeped in a way that is unquestionable given the election results. That's what the elections result told us, is that people finally realized that their rights are on the line, and Republicans are going to continue systematically. So it sucks that we can't get to a it'll be a while before I think that we'll be able to get rid of the filibuster, and that we'll be able to reform the Supreme Court. And we've talked about that on the show before, and it's necessary. But every time they sit there and eliminate one of our rights, what it does is that it adds ammunition to the point, and it adds that critical mass. And at some point, people are going to finally, even Democrats in the Senate and the House, are going to be like, you know what? Yeah, we can't continue.
And it is worth saying that that's one of the, if we see anything legislatively out of the House in the next 2 years, it's going to be stuff that will hurt people.
Yeah,
it will harm their privacy. It will harm their rights.
Yeah, and dick pics. That is our show for today. Joan, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. Carrie, you're so lovely. It's always glad to have you back. Thanks to Walter and Dorothy and Paul and everybody that works on this podcast behind the scenes at Daily Kos. And thank you, the listener and the viewer, for joining us every week and being part of this battle for our democracy. We did it this year. We talked about all last year. We kept saying this is not a typical midterm, and we were right. And it's because of people like you who never lost faith. So thank you so very much. I think with the holiday break, coming up, holiday season, it's time to be thankful and grateful for everything we were able to accomplish and to take some well-deserved rest. But the fight continues, and then we're going to pick this thing up. So we'll be back next week. Don't worry. But it's time that we can sort of breathe a little bit more and then get ready for the next phase of this battle, which will be 2024. And we got Supreme Court justice races in states. We got off-year elections. We're going to have special elections inevitably. So it's going to be an action-packed year. So we want to be nice and rested and energized for this battle ahead. So thank you for everything that you do. Love and appreciate you so much. Love you all. Have a great week. Catch you all next week.